Everyone, I am Dan Saraki, Mayor of the City of Oldsmar and PSTA's Vice Chair. Our Chair, Gina Driscoll, is not here today. I'd like to call the June 26th Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority meeting to order. Commissioner Schuman, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much for that. So I'm going to be chairing my first meeting, so I'm going to be working with this new computer system over here, so bear with me. All right, our first item on the agenda is I'm looking for a motion to allow Commissioner Scott to participate by Zoom.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Welcome, Commissioner Scott. Next item on our agenda is public comment. Now is the time for public comment on the consent agenda items or items not on the agenda. Please fill out a green card and get it to staff sitting at the front table. Speakers will be recognized in order in which cards are received. Are there any members of the public here who wish to make a public comment to the board? All right, I'm going to close the public comment. Next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Are there any items a board member wishes to pull from the consent agenda? All right. Okay, I have a motion for the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We need to open up the voting, please.
Commissioner Reed? Yes. Are you a yes?
Yeah, there he is.
He's on.
Yeah, I did. Commissioner Petrella?
Yes.
Do you want to ask Commissioner Scott?
Commissioner Scott, if he's on, I need his vote.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning.
Commissioner Scott, we need your vote.
On the consent?
On the
Yes.
consent. Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Albright, and I had you absent, but you're here. Would you like to cast your vote for consent?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, next item on our agenda is the community updates. First, we are going to receive a track update from Mark O'Hare. Are you here, Mark? No? All right, then we're going to move on to Patty Reed with the Forward Pinellas report. Commissioner Patty Reed, will you provide that report? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good morning. The board approved an amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program, which was needed to add $1.1 million to the TIP for eligible capital expenses related to the purchase and installation of 2 electric chargers and purchase of an electric tram. The board also approved the adoption of the FY 2025 to the FY 2029 TIP, which allows the county to receive state and federal funding for transportation projects. The board approved the adoption of the Multimodal Priority Transportation Alternatives Program Priority List. The Multimodal Priority List includes funding for PSTA's bus replacement program, the Clearwater Multimodal Center, and the regional van pools, 34th Street South Transit Capital. PSTA priority projects on the unfunded list include 34th Street South Transit Capital, electric bus replacement capital funding, including associated charging infrastructure, and alternate 19 transit enhancements. Updates were provided on the Gulf Boulevard safety studies and the PPC budget. The next regular Forward Pinellas Board meeting will be held on July 10th, 2024.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Reed,
Thank you.
for your update. All right, the next item on our agenda is item 5, which is our action items, and 5A is legal services agreement. Mr. Motivation, Al Burns, PSTA's procurement director, will outline our new contract for PSTA's legal service with PSTA's longtime counsel, Alan Zimmett. Al, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. Al Burns, your highly motivated procurement director. This morning, I'm bringing before you the legal services agreement, and the action is recommend approval of an agreement for legal services with Bryant Miller Olive, BMO, for 5 years in an amount not to exceed $1,750,000. Just for a little bit of background, Alan Zimmett has been our general counsel since 1988. Since 1988. He's a member of the BMO law firm, and he is also a member of the Government Counsel Services Practice Group, and he has over 40 years of experience, and he is certified by the Florida Bar and is also a member of the DC Bar. Alan knows transit, and I like to say that he's our resident historian. Alan serves on the panel of transit legal experts for the Transportation Research Board under the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine in Washington, D.C. So Alan serves as our general counsel and has been serving us since 1988. But he is one member of the BMO firm. BMO helps us out in several other areas. They represent us in labor and employment matters, working with operations and HR, and assist us in union negotiations and arbitrations. And personally, I work with BMO probably a lot on a weekly basis as it deals with contractual issues and the contracts that I bring before you on at the Finance Committee and board meetings. BMO reviews those as well. I want to illustrate that we're being good fiscal stewards with BMO and how in correlation to our budget. And so on this particular slide, I pulled the data from FY19 to this year. If you notice, there's an asterisk on actual for this year. Our budget was $270,300, and the actual, it says $304,171. That's just our straight line projection if we keep spending the way that we're spending, but I expect that to trend down. Oh. One thing I forgot to mention is that Alan is also an awesome golfer. I just thought I'd throw that in there. I've been doing this for procurement and contracts most of my professional career. Even back in the military, I had a warrant, a purchasing warrant. And Alan, since I've been here for the last 5 years, I've learned a tremendous amount from Alan Zimmett, and it's been an honor to work with him on some tough issues, and we don't always agree. And he sends me back to the drawing board a lot, and I'm okay with that because that keeps me sharp in my craft. And I just want to thank Alan personally and the whole BMO firm for all the work that they do. Action item today is recommend approve an agreement for legal services with Bryant Miller Olive for 5 years in an amount not to exceed $1,750,000. Mr. Chair, you were at the Finance Committee, and I believe it was a unanimous yes. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions for staff? Okay. Commissioner Eckerts? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we did arrive at a unanimous decision after some discussion.
Yes, sir.
Some of the questions were just basic, not to Alan's performance, because I haven't been here for a while to see that, although I'm sure it's been superior. But I asked the question about when we had last gone out for bid, and it's been some time. In the normal course of events, one would think that that would be the right thing to do at some point, to go back out and test the market. You did test a little bit. You did check with some other entities that showed that the rates that we're looking at for this next term were competitive. So that was kind of my first question, and maybe you could comment on that.
So you're absolutely right. there were a lot of questions at the Finance Committee. And Commissioner Eggers, and I thank them for being back. And one of the questions was, when is the last time we went out? And it's been a number of years. I don't even remember the answer to it, but I want to say it's been over 10 years. What we did in the contract that we negotiated with the BMO firm is contingent if Mr. Zimmet were to retire, that we have provisions in the contract which will allow us to go out for competition. And Commissioner Eggers did say it's not a knock against BMO or anything like that, or based on their performance, but as he said, to go out there and test the market. I did do some research on Hart. Hart went out recently, and they did a competitive solicitation. And also, I looked at Lynx over in Orlando, and they went through a competitive solicitation a number of years ago. So I feel confident, and the Florida statute is what allows us not to have to go out for competition. There are specific statutes in the Florida statutes that says, hey, you don't have to compete this. As far as rates, I not only looked to see if they went out for competition, but I also looked at the rates that Hart, Lynx pays. And our rates, it's not an apples to apples because Brian Miller Olive does so much more than just general counsel, whereas Hart and Lynx, their counsel is pretty much specific to general counsel. Dunedin compared to our rates, and our rates are equal to cities of, I think, Dunedin and Largo, if I'm not mistaken. Dunedin and Largo, and that was part of the things that we negotiated. So thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Eggers, and I hope I answered the questions correctly.
Yeah, I think that, the idea that you put in the contract when a council retires, that we have the ability at that point to go back out.
Yes.
I think that would be the right time to go back out, assuming that that's going to happen within the next 3 to 5 years, but to go back out to the market and test it.
Yes, sir.
I
Roger.
appreciate your answers to the questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Al, my main question is regarding the annual increases, the projected increases. Are those due to changes in the rates or changes in our anticipated need?
Very good question, and you were missed at the Finance Committee. I'll add, Commissioner Schulman. The rates that we negotiate, first off, I'd like to answer that question by saying, and I'm looking at Alan, I know he'll correct me if I'm mistaken, but I know that BMO has kept their rates flat over the course of the last, I want to say, 3 years. So they had no economic adjustment, and there has not been an escalation in their rates in the last 3 years. If I go back to this slide here, on the previous slide, I'm going to screw this up. On the previous slide, I showed, I think, that 3 years that our budget number was the same. And that, thank you. Our budget number, 270, 300 remained the same. And that was due to them not having received any price increase. Part of the negotiation, and I don't have the rates right in front of me, sir, but I could get them quickly, is I believe on the first year, there's a substantial increase, and that's just to bring them back up to current market rates. And one of the things that I did, I challenged BMO on that in negotiations, and we anchored that, and we tethered that to CPI for legal services. So now they're back on course for the appropriate rate. I believe every other year, I think there's a 5% increase, and when it all averages out over the course of the 5 years, I believe it turns out to be approximately 3%, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Alan?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere between 3 to 5% over the course. So there's some increase each year, and we tried to make it in, like, the hourly rates increase each year, but we use the same, I think the same number of hours that we've averaged over the year, over a calendar year to determine the totals. But there's a small increase in the hourly rates each year.
And I'll piggyback off of that. That's how I came up with that budgeted amount for the outline years 2025 through 29.
Yeah, so it looks like the annual increase is 4.7 to 5% per year. So I understand the large jump from 270 to 315. That is coming back to about a 3% increase if we had gone from the original contract, just increased it to 3% per year, we get it 315. So I understand that first initial jump. But is the CPI for legal services projected to be, almost 5% per year?
I do not want to give you a hot take up here, but I can find that out and give you that information before this meeting is over.
Okay, because I'm not sure what other contracts we have that have a 5% adjustment to the rate on an annual basis.
There are some contracts that we have, particularly, I want to say, on our request for qualifications or our engineering contracts. I believe there's an escalation provision in there of about, I want to say, 2.5 per year on the engineering services. Some of our commodity contracts, that depends on what the product is made out of, particularly if it's iron or steel products. Those typically have about a 5% escalation within the contract. And there's also provisions in our traditional contracts that allow for escalation and actually de-escalation. So it goes up and down. Yesterday, we received a de-escalation request from one of our suppliers. So I don't want to tell you that 5% isn't normal, but I would say anywhere between 2 and 5% is generally what our increases are. And you normally don't see those in your finance committee packets because I just bring you a not to exceed amount, what we anticipate the total value of the contract. I will say this, Commissioner Schulman, that we do make sure that the pricing is fair and reasonable before we bring it to the board. So it's not like we're not doing our due diligence or our research before we bring it to finance, and I know you know that.
No, and I absolutely understand that. I guess my question is if we're fair and reasonable at the fiscal year 25 projected number, and we're growing at 5%, by the time we get to fiscal year 29, are we still fair and reasonable, or have we surpassed fair and reasonable, right? So if we're compounding, if the rest of legal services is still at, an average 3%, and we're compounding an additional 2, then we're actually gonna be 11, 12% with the compounding ahead of fair and reasonable by the time we get to the end of the contract.
So point taken. In the way that our contracts are written, that's the reason we have those option years. Because if we did just a straight 5, we could, but we have option years and provisions in there. And what we do before we bring that to Brad for signature or back to the board for allowing us to exercise those option years, we look at that. And if at that time we bring it to you that we don't consider the pricing to be fair and reasonable, or the increase not to be fair and reasonable, we can always renegotiate that before exercising an option. And we do that.
Well, and I also realize that, 2% difference on a contract of this is, $6,000 per year. We're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. I just wanted to make sure that we were addressing those cost adjustments per year. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, sir.
Brad?
Yeah, Commissioner Schulman, you're right that the numbers that Al put on that PowerPoint slide do escalate by 5%. That's just Al's guess of the future. If you look at the rates, they don't go up by 5% a year. The general counsel one goes up by 2 or 1% per year.
It's in the agreement.
Just Al's estimate total went up by 5%, but that's he's just projecting that. The rates in the contract do escalate, I think, a total over the 5 years by 10%. So that's 2.5% or 3% or something like that. They're more reasonable.
Okay. And I appreciate you pointing that out. I didn't make it to page 16, but I was also going off the comments that Mr. Zimmett made that said that the amount of services were consistent per year. So then the only other variable was the rate. So that's why I was assuming it was the rate that changed. So what you're saying here is it's a small rate as well as a potential change for need.
Yeah.
Or usage. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Yep,
Commissioner Scott has his hand raised.
oh, yes, Commissioner Scott?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. What is the expiring hourly rate and what has been the annual increase on the current contract? Any idea what that is, Al?
Can you repeat the question, sir? I couldn't hear you very well.
What is the expiring hourly rate and what have been the annual increases on the current contract?
So I'll answer the second part first. There hasn't been an annual increase on the BMO contract since FY '22.
Okay, thank you for that.
And I'm not sure what you mean by the expiring rate, sir.
Well, I'm just looking at October 1, 2024 through September 30th, 25. The shareholders and the council hourly rate is $290 an hour, and it goes up $5 every year thereafter. So I'm just curious, is the expiring hourly rate, is it $285? Is it $275? Is it $250? I'm just trying to get an understanding of what the jump is on that first year.
I don't have the current contract in front of me, sir. I could get that to you before the meeting is out.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
No worries. I'll get that to you, Rachel.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item? Okay, I need a motion to approve. Thank you, Al, but I need a motion to approve. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? Open up the voting, please. Okay, Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have 10 yeses, right? Yep, 10 yeses and 0 noes.
Or we, didn't pop up,
It's popping up, but,
it's not working. I can manually.
okay, so yes.
Okay, we have a unanimous 11 votes. Congratulations, Alan.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And
Thank you,
Al,
Mr.
great
Chair.
job. Thank you so much for your hard work.
Thank you, sir.
Next item on our agenda is 6A, fiscal year 2025 PSTA's operating budget. Brad and PSTA's Chief Financial Officer, Debbie Leas, will introduce the proposed fiscal year 2025 PSTA operating budget. Brad?
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So before Debbie starts up, I'm very pleased to present this fiscal year 2025 PSTA operating budget to you because it's a lot different and a lot better, I think, than we were a year ago at this time where we were looking at potential reducing or cutting our service. And we had folks from the public come and speak to us a lot about that. So you're going to hear some good news that we're not recommending any cuts in fiscal year 2025. I do think, and I am grateful to the PSA board for participating in a couple of workshops prior to this and having a lot of discussions with me, one-on-ones. And I hope that you see that many of the discussions that we've had over the last couple of months have made it into the budget. Debbie's going to have a group of our staff talking to you this morning, going through this PowerPoint. But obviously this is the first time you've seen this, and so the major to-do list item that Debbie and I are hoping to do is to have a one-on-one, one-on-two with the two of us with you in person sometime this summer. So look for Rachel to be getting on your calendars. With that, I'll hand it over to Debbie.
Thank you so much, Brad. Debbie Leas, Chief Financial Officer here at PSTA. And thank you, Chair Saraki and the board members. We are very appreciative of all the input and ideas you came up with through the board budget development workshops that we had. And as Brad mentioned, you will see in this budget the priorities that are most important to you and also reflect that we continue to be the best in the nation, as you can see on the banner behind you and as you drove in today. But let's take a little bit closer look at some of the concepts that staff took away as priorities from the board. You said you wanted us to increase ridership. Of course, that helps to increase revenues and look at other sources of revenues. We take a look at tourist services, increased partnerships, as well as, of course, cost efficiencies. Also at the workshop, you had the opportunity to collaborate with Trish Collins, our HR director, on our scorecard. While PSTA is a government agency, we use the balanced scorecard method to measure our performance through metrics. And based on the board's feedback, you will be seeing some changes to our metrics we currently have and some new metrics. In the month of July, you will be asked to review those for fiscal '25, and that will be voted on next month. And that will be again for fiscal '25. Now, in your packets is the draft PSTA operating budget for fiscal '25. Today, we're going over a high-level overview. As Brad mentioned, our own personal scorecard is to be able to meet with each one of you to answer very detailed questions throughout the process. This is, at this point, I would call a living document. Staff is constantly looking not only to make sure we've ticked and tied and have everything perfect in there, but we're continuing to work to improve the budget as we go through the summer. So let's take a look at the overview here of the budget. In the second column, you will see fiscal '24. That is the current budget year we're in that ends on September 30th. Based on our forecast, we're anticipating $113 million worth of revenue. And if you take a look at the bottom line, $112 million of expenses, allowing for a one-time surplus of approximately $1 million this year. And we will continue to work with staff on that as well, but I'm very, very proud of everyone here for tightening their belts during the course of this year, because it takes quite a bit. Now, let's take a look at fiscal '25. If you take a look at the top line, our revenues are $122.3 million. I'm going to ask you to jump down to the bottom line where you see total expenses of $121.7. So already, without anything else, our revenues are exceeding our expenses, giving us a small surplus. Let's take a look at the second line on here where I've got fiscal '25 fare adjustment, approximately $500,000. Actually, I think it's a little bit north of $500,000. And we are going to be talking about that in a minute, but this is something that will help to increase our overall revenues. When we get down to the bottom line and we look at the surplus for next year, including a fare adjustment that does not include any fare increases, but also has a result of increasing our grant revenues, we have over $1 million. With that, we may be able to provide new tourist service, one of your tenants that we came out of the workshops, from the Clearwater Airport out to the beaches. But let's take a little bit deeper dive into the fare adjustments. Based on the workshop, we went back and we looked at a couple different things. One was increasing the base fare from $225 to $250. Staff looked at that, and we looked at the ridership loss. It's called elasticity. We looked at the ridership loss, and we looked at the revenue increase, and it did not make sense. We also took a look at what if we decreased the cost of a base fare to $2, would we make it up on volume? And we did not. So we didn't feel comfortable with either of those two, bringing it back to the board. So what we did is we said, let's take a look at our monthly fare cap. Now, let me explain what a monthly fare cap is. Some of you might not know, but we have like a daily fare cap here on our Flamingo system. So when you get on the bus, you tap on, and it's $225. You go on the next bus, you tap, it's now another $225 or $4.50. The next time you get on and you tap, it's only 50 cents. Anything after that is free. So this continues throughout the month up to a cap of $70, after which it's free for the whole rest of the month. What staff is recommending is to take that from $70 to $85, which is reflective of our regional fare that we have, but between both HART and PSTA. This has minimal impact on our riders. For those riders that do make it up to the $70, who are not part of one of our many programs that we have here, it just requires a couple extra trips to be able to meet the $85. But where it's really important and positively impacts our bottom line is we get grant revenue for our transportation disadvantaged customers. Today, the customer pays $11 to ride all month, and the state of Florida picks up the balance, another $59. By raising it to $85, our transportation disadvantaged customers still only pay $11, but the state of Florida pays the balance. This is one of those grants where we get money in, and if you don't spend it during the course of the year, you lose it. And we've been leaving money on the table. So this will help us get up to our maximum amount that we can have. And the result is over $500,000 worth of revenue. It does not really impact the customers. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Darden Rice, who is our Chief Planning and Communications Officer. Darden?
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Darden Rice, Chief Planning and Community Affairs Officer, and I'm presenting you some top-line concepts of our proposed fiscal year 2025 services. As you know, PSTA is honored and grateful to be recognized as APTA's #1 mid-sized transit agency of the year last year. The planning team enjoys working closely with you, members of the board, other agencies, and responding to community stakeholders as we think about ways to continue to improve our service. All of PSTA certainly wants to keep up our important level of service and push ourselves to get even better results for riders and taxpayers alike as we plan for fiscal year 25. So to keep up our commitment to our riders and taxpayers, we proposed, #1, no service reductions. So last year, we enacted service reductions. The board voted in October. It took place in December. We cut routes 813, 814, Central Avenue, Trolley west of Grand Central. And this year, we don't want to cut routes, and we do want to set the stage for considering strategic expansions. Now, as you know, we live in a county where 48% of our population is either below the federal poverty line or are working paycheck to make ends meet. These are people who depend on PSTA service. Employers depend on PSTA to get people to the workplace. And that's why it's so great that we can recommend a budget with no cuts or increasing the base fare. Many of you also deeply understand that transit is it's a fundamental economic development investment. So we present to you the following ways we propose to build upon our current service. And this is based on our feedback from you, members of the board, and the public as well. So next is the new 34th Street South premium service. We are utilizing service development grants and earmarks to provide higher frequency along the 34th Street South corridor from Eckerd College to Grand Central Station. And this will connect to and complement the Bus Rapid Transit Sunrunner service. Next is our Clearwater Beach Ferry and Cross Bay Ferry service. An RFP is out for our continued waterborne transit ferry services for the Clearwater Beach area. We are also planning for PSTA to issue an RFP in the coming months for the Cross Bay Ferry. These are successful, popular, well-known services, and they are the foundation for the waterborne transit studies that you've read about in the news lately, in which Forward Pinellas and others are evaluating potential expansion. The next item is St. Pete Clearwater Airport service to the beaches. We have heard loud and clear from many people here on the dais and at many public meetings the desire for us to look into providing new service between Clearwater Beach and the St. Pete Clearwater Airport, or PIE. My team is working with stakeholders to determine what that service looks like, what the ridership will be, the operating and the capital cost, and the potential sources of revenue to pay for it. Stay tuned. The next item, the last item is community bus plan, and we have currently wrapped up our second outreach phase, and we will be commencing the third phase based on board budget recommendations. We're doing a deep dive into our current services and looking for opportunities for improvements to service. As you know, we do a community bus plan every 5 years, which becomes part of the TDP and the LRTP, which is aligned with Forward Pinellas. The changes that we will be presenting will be presented in a cost-neutral framework. And our goal also, as part of the community bus plan process, is to also provide the board with analysis of what improved premium service could look like for certain select core routes, and we'll be bringing that to you this fall. So to wrap this up, we are looking for the big ideas, such as the St. Pete Clearwater Airport service to the beaches, as I mentioned. We are evaluating what the future looks like with future multimodal stations that would align with the new gateway developments and the new Pinellas County Complex headquarters to be located on Almerton Road, and a potential multimodal location at the historic gas plant redevelopment, exciting project in St. Pete. So there's obviously a lot of moving parts with all of that, but our planning team is on our toes, ready, because these are such compelling opportunities for transit in our region, and we want, by working together with you, to be part of that and to help lead those conversations. So thank you very much, and any questions or feedback, or I'll hand this over to Trish Collins, our Human Resources Director.
Do we have any questions for staff? Commissioner Eggers, go ahead.
If you could maybe speak to the, how the UPass is doing and what potential for growth there is in that, at least that you're seeing and understanding. And when I think of UPass, maybe I've got the wrong term, but the business using passes for.
Yeah, that's UPass.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I don't have those numbers at the ready. I can get that to you, but I know I can generally say it's doing very well, and we have some exciting prospects of businesses that we're reaching out to grow the program.
And the ones that we've had are staying with
I
us?
believe so. Yeah, it's popular. Once people work with us and adopt the program, they really like it.
Mostly tourism-based users?
No, not exactly. Thank you. Amanda oversees our contracts with UPass.
Thank you.
Good morning, Amanda Baird, Director of Communications and Marketing. We do have a lot of tourism-based hotels, resorts. We also have, obviously, Pinellas County schools and several universities throughout the county, USF, St. Pete College, and PTech. Additionally, we do have healthcare with HCA hospitals, and we're looking at some other health systems who have expressed interest as well.
So do you have a breakdown of that we could get?
Yeah, I
like
can.
the tourism-based, medically, schools, that kind of thing?
I can provide our client
That'd
list,
be great.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Brad, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add, the newest one that we launched about a month ago was sort of a pilot idea, a UPass contract with a neighborhood association in St. Petersburg, Kenwood Neighborhood Association, which thanks to Mayor Saraki and and Commissioner Fig Sanders for joining me at the opening of that. This was suggested by the Kenwood Neighborhood Association that they would pay us for members of their association that paid dues to the neighborhood to get a UPass. And so so far we've issued, I think the latest number was just under 400 people have. It's been a huge boon for the neighborhood association. They've had 400 new people sign up to be part of their neighborhood, and then they're given a Flamingo card, but it has the Kenwood Neighborhood Association logo, and then we're tracking the number of riders that are riding. The 400 cards have been passed out, but not 400. They have not all been used. Only about 10% of them, a little bit less than 10% of the cards have actually been used on a bus. So far, it's early, but, so we're monitoring that, and we've gotten a lot of interest from other neighborhoods that maybe this might be an avenue for our future as well. Yeah.
All right, one comment before you run away. The new service for Clearwater and St. Pete, the airport, I use that airport all the time. I think that is a great new idea to move people to that airport, because that airport is such, it's in a great location, and it's just easy to get around. I don't know if you have any plans for maybe the north, because every time I Uber, it's $40. I would love to hop on a bus and go to the airport, but I just wanted to throw that out to you.
Thank you. That's really great feedback, and we'll certainly keep all of our board members in the loop as we progress with our study.
Wonderful.
All right.
All right. Commissioner Scott, do you have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Scott. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Darden, thank you very much for that presentation. Quick question. On the 34th Street South premium service, you mentioned that there's going to be a service development grant from FDOT on that. Can you talk about that a little bit? Is that for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? And what sort is the fiscal impact of that? And what level of expenses is that going to cover in the operation of that service?
So the FDOT service grant was approximately somewhere right around $2 million. The PSTA matching was another $2 million, so we're looking at about a $4 million budget for that service. And what the planning team is going to present to the board will be just sort of like some choices to look at in terms of what that premium service looks like from, what are we, there's the underlying service, then there's the limited stop service that kind of overlays that. And we're looking at the financials to determine which of those bus stops and the underlying route would be potentially eliminated and which of the new service would be added. There are some significant differences in each scenario, and it's particularly different if we were to look at the corridor going up to Pinellas Park. So I don't have that answer for you right now, but that's something that we will be ready to present to you pretty soon, and I'm really looking forward to your feedback on that as well.
Okay, thank you. So the $2 million from FDOT, that's for fiscal year 25, I assume? Is there anything they've committed for fiscal years beyond that?
Once, it's for 3 years.
3 years, okay. So that's $2 million over 3 years or $2 million each year?
That's a really good question. Once we begin service, and we've had a lot of conversations with the state about this, once we begin service, we would be able to apply for an extension so that we could do the whole 3 years.
Okay. Okay, well, just keep us up to date as you get more clarification on that, please.
I sure will. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll bring, sorry.
Commissioner Eggert, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I think the more we talk about this, the more ideas swirl around, and I don't mean in a negative way, just I think the airport services has got real potential just in our conversations that we were having. We've gotten some input from our TDC folks that talk about, parking your car out at the parking garage out there costs you $50 a night or something, and the costs of getting there, those folks are spending $500, $600, $700 a night for a hotel room. So getting back and forth and using that service would be great, and not having to deal with a car. And if occasionally you want to go to St. Pete museums, you can take an Uber, you can take a bus ride down, a trolley ride down the beaches or whatever. So I think there's some real opportunities there to explore. I'm assuming that none of those, well, the 34th Street, you have some money in the budget. But
so the top 2 points, the no service reductions in the 34th Street South corridor, that's kind of baked into the budget that Debbie has presented.
And the others are not yet.
Right, and on the ferries, we're waiting for whoever is awarded the contract, they will propose the rate, and then we'll be able to crunch the numbers there.
Okay.
But that's, that would not be something
All right.
huge coming out of
And
our
then-
budget.
Thank you. And then if we could just get the before and after, first of the year, end of the year kind of projections on our reserve levels for capital operating. And I know what they are for health, the healthcare, but I'd just like to have those as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is a hot topic, and we're looking for you keeping us updated. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll bring up Trish Collins, our Human Resources Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Darden. I'm following a very exciting part of this presentation. I'm Trish Collins, the Director of Human Resources, and I'm going to talk with you about the pieces of the budget that relate to our most valuable assets, our personnel. And specifically, that is salaries and health insurance costs. So these components do make up a substantial portion of the budget. It's about 60% of the budget, which is consistent with what you've seen in previous years. The bulk of our salaries go to our frontline employees, which are represented by our largest employee union, and that includes our bus operators, our fleet and facilities maintenance employees, and our customer service representatives. We're currently beginning union negotiations right now for a new 3-year contract, and we feel very hopeful that we will be bringing you a new contract to review and hopefully approve in August of this year. For administrative staff, you'll see that this budget includes a projected 3% performance-based increase, and that's based on performance reviews that are conducted at the end of the year. And this is consistent with other public agencies around the county and the municipalities. I will say that we're very mindful, especially this year, of the difference between our administrative costs compared to our operating costs. And so we did take a close look at opportunities that we would have there. We are, in this budget, looking at outsourcing the accounting revenue function following some retirements. This is a function that counts the cash that's collected on our buses, and we feel like that's got a potential to be outsourced and for some savings. We're also reducing one marketing staff position. And both of those adjustments are possible because of some creative reorganizations in the finance and in the marketing department based on some vacancies. The other significant portion of personnel expense is health insurance costs. We have seen an increase in our claims over this past year, and we received a 0% increase last year. So with both of those things, we knew that this year we would see an increase in our renewal rates. We've worked very hard with our broker to negotiate down from an initial renewal rate proposal of 13.5%. Our broker has worked hard and gotten that down to a maximum of 7%, which is in line with other public entities that typically see an increase of around 7 to 9% per year. We are also reviewing a plan change option with a smaller 5% increase, but that comes with a dramatic increase to out-of-pocket costs, deductibles, and service costs for the employees. We're in discussions with our union about both options, and we are making the decision that will be the best for our employees and the agency in terms of keeping the plan robust and affordable. To be conservative, we have built in the 7% option to our balanced budget. So we know that with whichever plan is selected, it does fit into our balanced budget. And also, with whichever plan is chosen, we will be sharing the cost increase between PSTA and our employees. I will note, finally, that unlike some municipalities, PSTA is not self-funded, and so we don't currently have a healthcare reserve that can absorb the cost increase. We do discuss the option of becoming a self-funded entity every year with our broker, and if at some point in the future that made financial sense, we would consider that option. With that, I will introduce our Director of Mobility Services, Bonnie Epstein, to talk about that portion of the budget.
Good morning, I'm Bonnie Epstein, I'm the Director of Mobility Services, and I'm here to talk to you today about our PSTA Access Program. So as a reminder, the PSTA Access Service is the service that we provide for riders with disabilities who cannot ride the fixed route service. This service is entirely contracted, provided by contractors, not in-house, and this service is separate from our transportation disadvantaged or TD services that we also provide. Some of you will remember 6 years ago, back in 2018, the contractor that we had at that time, CareRide, was really struggling to keep up with the volume. You'll see here in April of 2018, that month we completed just over 28,000 rides on the Access service. And both CareRide and PSTA staff, we were really feeling the pressure of that volume. Ridership seems to be growing every month. Just felt like there's a lot of demand and ridership on the Access program. Fast forward to today, April 2024, we had just over 42,000 rides in the month of April. So you see that is an almost 50% increase in ridership over the past 6 years. And that rate of growth that we've seen is still continuing to go up. The rate of growth is escalating very quickly. This year for our Access services, the budget was $14.6 million. If we continue on this rate of growth that we've seen, next year we're going to need over $16 million for the Access services. So for fiscal year 25, we're looking to make some adjustments to the part of the Access program where we've seen the majority of the growth. And these changes would go into effect on October 1st. I presented these changes to our track committee last week, and there were no concerns with the proposal. We'll still be meeting all of our ADA requirements, and we'd really like to stay number one in customer service. I say that's based on our ABBG Paratransit Customer Satisfaction Survey that we had last year. Based on all the ABBG agencies that participated, PSTA was ranked number one in customer service for paratransit. And we're really proud of that. So we're not proposing any cuts to the Access program, but instead what we're calling guide rails. So this is based on lessons learned from other agencies who have similar on-demand type programs that we do here at PSTA. So first, we plan on making the PSTA MOD fare the same as the Access fare, $4.50 per trip for both services. Additionally, if a rider takes a trip on demand or MOD ride that's more than $25 per trip, or if a rider takes more than 30 on-demand trips in the month, they'll pay more for those more expensive MOD services. The quality of our service is not changing. We'd like to keep everything the same quality, and riders can still use the traditional pre-scheduled Access service in addition to the on-demand program. I think we can all agree that that the PSTA Access program is very important, and we want to maintain our number one customer service ranking while keeping the ridership growth at a sustainable level so we can keep the service there for the riders that need us the most. With that, I'd like to pass it over to Henry to talk about electric buses.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, Henry Lukasik, Director of Maintenance. So over the past couple of months, or if you've been on the board for a while, you're aware, and I've mentioned that PSTA currently has on order 60 new all-electric buses, and it represents one of the largest bus orders that PSTA has put in since the 2006 era. For those new board members, I would like to do just a quick historical recap. So PSTA's transit fleet is made up of about approximately 210 heavy transit buses. About 106 of those are diesel, 92 are hybrid electrics, and currently today, 12 of those are all electrics. 6 of those are our original ones that we purchased in 2018 and 2020. They are still out there performing reliably. And we've currently got 6 of the all-new Gillig all-electrics in service today. 2 were just delivered about 3 weeks ago, and we look to have those in for July of this calendar year, and we have another 12 going into production as we speak. So, all said, we will have 20 new electric buses in service in time for fiscal year '25. And that's where this slide comes into play when we talk about savings with electric buses. So it's obvious that if a bus runs on electricity, you're not consuming fuel. And based off the data that we have collected thus far with the 6 buses in service, well over 120,000 operating miles since the month of January, we are able to make these projections for '25. On average, it's also, I should mention that these 60 new buses are going to be replacing 60 2005 and 2006 model year transit buses that have well over 1.1 million miles on them. So they've more than exceeded their useful life of 18 and 19 years, respectively. Retiring one of those diesel buses will equate to approximately using 10,500 less gallons of fuel per bus per year. So when you factor that out across 20 new vehicles, that is 210,000 gallons of diesel fuel that we will not be consuming in FY '25. Based off the Finance Department's projection of using approximately $2.60 a gallon, that equates to that $546,000 savings for FY '25. Now, maintenance savings. So logic dictates that if you are replacing anything that is 19 years old with something that's brand new, you're going to realize less cost to maintain it. It's brand new. It should be less. But some of the other things that I want to talk about, and if you were part of the planning committee, you heard me mention some of the things that are specific to electric buses that really result in what we feel will be a savings just based off the two differences of propulsion systems. If you've been on the board for a few years, you've probably heard me mention about the benefit of having electrified accessories on buses, and I'm not talking about lights and windshield wipers, but I'm talking about components such as, much like in your automobile, air conditioning compressors, alternators, power steering pumps. Buses have a few other components that are either belt or gear driven, prone to wear and routine maintenance. When I talk about electrified accessories, since they are all basically electrical components now, there are no belts, there are no pulleys, there's no gear-driven actuators, and so electrified accessories last longer, there's less wear items on them. If you have an electric lawnmower, if you've adopted that philosophy, you know that basically that is a blade, a motor, and a battery, as opposed to all the other components that may go into a traditional combustion lawnmower. Now, I know there's a big difference between a lawnmower and a transit bus. Some of the other things, being that it's an electric bus, there is no engine and there's no traditional transmission. And between those two components, there are probably thousands of components that either can break, wear out, or fail. Those do not exist on electric buses. I want to throw one other fact in there real quickly, since on the topic of engines themselves. Since these do not have engines, we do not have to change the oil. So when you look at that across 20 buses, that is 5,600 less quarts of oil that we will use on an annual basis. We will not need it. That's about 1,400 gallons, or in much like your automobile, that's like changing your oil 1,400 times less. So that also results in a savings. Also, since it does not have a diesel engine, I'm sure if you are familiar, and because you might have a diesel pickup or so on and so forth, you're familiar with the very complex exhaust after treatment systems that are on diesel engines today. That is a requirement. They are complex systems on a transit bus, and if you do not maintain them properly, they can be very costly. I mentioned a couple specific components at the planning committee. that are required to eliminate emissions as much as they can currently. And yes, they do cost several thousands of dollars apiece. Also, looking forward to the ahead, the 2027 Tier 4 final emission laws, where they target the elimination or as much as close of CO2 emissions, those systems will get even more complex. Being said, we do not have this issue with an electric bus. Also, there is an element of savings. As you heard us mention, that we have operated hybrid electric buses, and they do combine many of the same components, operating principles that all electrics have. Being said, that translates to experience. Our operators know how to effectively drive all-electric buses to maximize performance and range, and of course, our technicians in fleet maintenance have well over a decade and a half of experience maintaining high-voltage propulsion system technologies. It's safe to say that when you have the experience and you know what you're doing, that it does result in a savings. Now, we're not using fuel, but we will be consuming electricity. And that's where that final element is not a savings, but it is a cost. So we have estimated that in FY25 that the electrical cost will be approximately $330,000. Obviously, our kilowatt hours usage is going to go up, and our fuel consumption will go down. Now, when you add up all of those, we are confident that we will see a net savings just with the 20 new electric buses for FY25, $552,000. And with that,
We have some questions. Yes, go ahead.
So I'm going to.
Mayor Petrilla,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I've got 3 questions. First one is, what is the effective life of the new buses versus the old one? You mentioned 20 years on the old ones. With the new ones, most of the components will probably stay at 20 years, but the batteries generally might be less. So that's question number 1. Question number 2, on the maintenance savings, is there going to be a reduction in force because they require less maintenance? And if yes, what has the union said about that? And then the third question is on the savings is, I know we looked at, the last time Brad gave me a tour of the grounds, which was awesome. We talked about new charging stations, and is the cost for the new charging stations factored into the additional cost and into additional savings long-term?
Sure. So to answer your first question, when we look at overall life cycle of the bus, it has been the case since I've been here over 10 and a half, now 11 years, that PSTA retires its buses at approximately 18 years, regardless of propulsion type. We'd love to replace them sooner. Hopefully FTA will continue funding with bus purchases. So we don't look to reduce the life cycle of the bus itself, being that it's an electric. In terms of battery life, we can use our historical experience with hybrid electrics and also the 2 original electrics. We are confident that we're going to see approximately 8.5 to 9 years on the battery life. And even with that respect, we do an annual health test. So the question is really, when do you forecast the battery degradation to get such that you're going to have to get in and start replacing battery packs? We are able to do an annual health test, and even then, if we find a particular issue, which there has not been, we are able to go ahead and diagnose it at the specific cell level, not replacing the, in some cases, there's 6 or 7 total battery packs. We are also able, if we do need to get into battery maintenance, do the work completely in-house as opposed to just buying the outright battery pack assemblies. So that saves a considerable amount of money there. In terms of a reduction of force, we do not anticipate a reduction in force. We also don't look at adding any more technicians than we currently have. Most of our maintenance is based off predetermined life cycles and also intervals. So right now, no reduction in force. For the cost on the chargers, if I understand the question, was a one-time cost for those chargers. And where I see the savings involved with those chargers is basically that they are sophisticated enough where that we can program them to employ elements of smart charging, whereas we can plug them in any time of day, and the chargers will not actually start charging the bus until a specific time, taking advantage of the Duke time of use rates, either off-peak or the very lucrative super off-peak. So that's where I see the savings involved with that.
All right, any other questions? All right, I believe it would be Commissioner Schuman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question on battery replacement, and this may be for Debbie as well. Are we accruing for the future battery replacement costs? And are those considered a capital or operating expense?
Great question. I always love your questions. As far as that, yes, we have major component replacement parts within our capital budget, so we do have that already built in there.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Scott, do you want to go next, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is just a comment. These savings that you've outlined here, Henry, are wonderful. Not to throw shade on them, I just want to keep things in perspective, is that these operational savings are coming at significantly higher capital costs because the purchase price of electric buses are significantly more than either diesel or hybrid buses, which is basically borne by the federal government, which are taxpayers across the country. So I just want to keep all of that in perspective, and as long as the federal government continues to fund that, I guess that's wonderful. But we are $34 trillion in debt as a nation, and that situation could change. But these savings are great, and I appreciate you going through the exercise.
Want to take it? Thank you.
We have two more questions. Secretary Treasurer Deb Fix-Sanders, you have the floor.
I do. Thank you so much, and thank you for that presentation. I also heard your presentation in the planning committee. I have a couple of questions in regards to, you gave a number of, you have 60 on order. Are we expecting all 60 to arrive at the same time?
No, Commissioner. Let me give an update on that. So as you heard, we have 6 in service. 2 are ready to go in service. 12 will go into production. We expect to receive those in time for FY25, so by October, that's the 20. The next batch of 24 buses will go into production around October of 2024, and we should start receiving those throughout the year of calendar 2025.
Okay.
Most likely wrapping up in the fall of 2025. Then the final batch of 24 will go into production fourth quarter of calendar year 25 and will continue into calendar year 26, and we'll be receiving about 1 bus a week throughout calendar year 26.
Okay, thank you for that, because I was really wondering how we were going to, infiltrate them into the system, because thank you for asking that question about the union. I wanted to know what that was going to look like with our labor force as we transition from the diesel fuel to the electric buses. Another quick question, and this is just something that just came to mind. You buy a new car, you trade in your old car. Are there any revenue generation possibilities for the older buses that we're taking out of circulation?
Yes, in short, it is scrap value. By the time we retire these buses, there really is nothing left to give to anybody who may want it. And then also, as the board is aware, we have taken acceptance of VWS settlement money, and they have a prescribed process for disposing of those buses, which is permanent disablement.
Okay, thank you for that. I didn't know that. Thank you for that. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Cox?
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chair. My battery just went dead on my device here. Bonnie, this will kind of be a question towards you, or your department. And we are proposing to go even on the co-pays for MOD and for access, which is good, which will generate revenue. But explain to me, Dave, could I look at yours? Up here, right here. And about the guide rails, could you go to that? That's page 11, the proposed adjustments. Yeah, there we go. Explain that to me, though. The mobility on-demand trip cost sharing after first $25, how does that work?
Yeah, so the proposal would be that for each trip that we provide, if the trip is over $25 in cost, since all of our on-demand providers we pay like the meter rate, that PSA would pay the first $25 of the trip and the customer would pay the remaining.
Okay. And then now we're paying the whole,
Yeah, the customer pays the co-pay up front, and then we cover the entire remaining balance.
okay, good, that clarifies that. Thank you, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Eggerts?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just a few things as I'm looking at my scribbled notes here. So the electric saving, or the electric charging costs of it just seems high to me. So, again, I have nothing to compare to except like electrical at your home, where you might be getting charged at $250 a month, and now you're getting charged $50 a month. So, I mean, you're talking about just 20 buses, and the cost of saving the cost of fuel, it's about $5.40. It just seems like there would be more savings. I'm just from a electrical charging cost standpoint. Just, is there some fixed cost in that number, or is it just Duke Energy related cost increases that we're anticipating?
The electric charging cost is based off what we are paying on a per kilowatt hour basis, and I can say that unlike, and I too am a Duke customer, and I look at my residential bill and I see that it goes up just like everybody else. And when I look at what a commercial user for Duke Energy bill looks like, I once had the privilege of going through a education that lasted over 4 hours on how to interpret a commercial account user of Duke. And saving the 4 hours that we do not have here today, I can tell you that unlike our residential homes, they have time of use rates. Whereas there's peak, off-peak, mid-peak, super off-peak, and that's where really, when we look at how we're budgeting the cost of a single kilowatt hour, that's where we're coming up with that cost of $330.
Okay, I'll just go along with it because I have no idea, so I appreciate that. Battery replacements every 8 years, you said?
That's what yes, 8 years, that's what we're seeing.
That's what you're saying. Any sense of disposal costs on those kind of batteries that we're talking? Is it high, is it pretty, I mean, these are fairly big and heavy, from what I understand, right?
Right, so with our hybrid electric buses, what we found is that there was a market demand for our retired battery packs, so we actually made money for those. Now, moving ahead, there still is some demand left. Obviously, whenever we dispose of a battery, they must ensure that they're following the EPA standards for disposal and sign a bill of lading. Some of our battery electric buses, such as the originals, can actually go on into a secondary life. whereas they can be wayside energy storage systems, so on and so forth. So when we look at costs of disposal, based off the total lifespan we can get out of them, it's not really a very high cost.
Interesting how we'll have some disposal values with that, and to your question, not the buses at all. And, you know, so like somebody's garbage is somebody else's treasure, I've always been told. So you'd think that there might be something out there. And I like the question about accruing costs for those replacement, just in that, you know, it's going to be an expensive process, and I don't know what those costs are. And always appreciate Commissioner Scott's perspective comments, because whether it's the issues that he brought up, whether it's just the idea that electricity is being generated, you know, from a coal-powered company, driving electric costs for our buses to save, you know, so there's just that whole issue. And I just, again, for perspective, that these are, at this point, the first 60 have been our tax dollars being used from the federal level to buy these buses. At some point, that's not going to happen. So when we get, and I don't know what those costs are. I understand they used to be $1 million. I don't know what they are now, but we just keeping all of those perspectives in place as we move and change our fleet. I love the cost savings that you're projecting. I think that's great. But there's a lot of dynamics in play in the years to come. So thank you for that presentation.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Next is Commissioner David Albritton.
Yes, you know, when we first started talking about electric buses, my concern was batteries. And, you know, the cost of replacing them versus the value of the bus. I mean, it was, and I was told, and I can't really remember exactly, but it was either 12 or 20 years was the warranty on the bus. Because I wanted to make sure, and I was like, I remember, I was like, wow, they're giving us that much, and you're talking about 8 years now, and I think it was more than that on the warranty. Can you remind me what the warranty was?
So what you're referring to, Commissioner Albritton, was our BYD buses that we purchased in 2018 and 2020. And that's where BYD as a manufacturer had stated that they would offer a warranty for 12 years on the battery, and that afterwards those batteries could, in theory, last approximately 26 years as a secondary means. For example, you take them off the bus at 12, they go and become a storage device for
Like solar or something? Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
I say that in theory, that they would last 12 years or 26. We have since changed bus manufacturers to Gillig. They start off at 6 years because it's a different battery chemistry. The BYDs were an iron phosphate chemistry. These are lithium ion. Now, regardless, when it comes time to, and I don't mean replace battery packs off the shelf, but we are actually able to rebuild them at a significant cost savings. So while the Gilligs may have a smaller lifespan of a total overall warranty, that when it comes time, which we are projecting at 8 years, so 2 years past warranty, that we can rebuild those at a substantially less cost than purchasing outright. I say substantial, meaning that typically on average, about $150,000 to rebuild or replace battery packs. We're able to do it around 30 with in-house labor with our own technicians.
All right, that's good to know. I didn't know that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Eggerts.
Just one last question. What are the relative weights of these buses, like the ones we're getting rid of versus the new ones, just out of curiosity? Do you have a sense of that?
So the average transit bus, not a motor coach, Commissioner Scott, the average transit bus is right around 39,000 pounds. These are 49,000 pounds.
Okay, 9,000. Okay, so the wear and tear on the roads and the bill that we're gonna send us from the county to, I'm kidding. There is, however, an effort to, do, like on our gas, when we go buy gas, we have a gas tax for our cars. There's no gas tax right now for electric vehicles, although there's efforts being made to talk about, have an adjustment for that purpose because of the weight of the cars. And I was just curious about the weight of the buses, and none of those, since they don't seem to be making much progress, none of those increases are baked into anything in our budgets right now. So that's a savings as well on the gas tax side, right? Or is there a gas tax savings going to electric?
There's no gas tax, because PSTA doesn't pay the tax.
Oh, you don't pay any gas taxes at all?
No.
Good grief. Boy, do we have it made. No gas taxes. So, okay, all right, that's interesting. Thank you. I can't believe that.
All right, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, thank you. Anybody else, any other questions? All right.
Thank you so much. That was a really good, robust discussion, and of course, as Brad likes to say, Henry and others will put catnip in front of me. So when Henry talks about what our electric power costs are for propulsion power, and we're doing it at off-peak, whatever we need to do to get to that super off-peak rate is about 85% less than what we've got baked in the budget. So it may mean more electric vehicles, et cetera, but that'll be savings down the road, where the delta will be even greater between the diesel fuel and the propulsion power. So with that happy note, one of the things I wanted to kind of reiterate with all the discussion we've had today, some of the takeaways that we have, just to reiterate, is that we've got a balanced budget. We're strategically adding new service, specifically tourist service, and there's being no changes to our operating reserves, which I have at 2 months, especially given our increase in health insurance costs. And we here at PSTA, as you heard Trish mention, we do not have a health insurance reserve. One of the things that, as we look to add or modify our metrics, and you'll see some up here, and I just wanted to pause for a second on the fare recovery ratios. One of the things that we don't have yet in the budget, like I said, it's a living document, is we don't have the ferry revenue in here yet. As Darden mentioned, we'll be getting that back in our RFP, what the charges would be, what they're recommending that we'd bring to the board. And we don't have anything in the budget for any of the changes that Bonnie just spoke about, so that'll be an improvement to our budget as well. And speaking of which, in the month of July, we'll be holding a public hearing on any fare adjustments that we have. But one of the things as we look to metrics and help to improve ourselves and improve our service, we're also very mindful of what the state legislature has in their new legislation for metrics. I am pleased to say that what we have in the budget will not only, I think, address all of that, but also help us to not only look good, but improve where we are from where we are today. So let's take a look in summation. Oh, let me go back, I just saw that. One of the things that we do have in our budget, which you've all heard about throughout the years, is we've taken a lead in the nation on privatizing services. And one of the things that's a fun fact for today, besides Henry's fun facts, is that we are the #1 customer in the state of Florida with Uber. So that's your fun fact for me. So we have a balanced budget today with a surplus that we're going to continue to try to improve upon, with no service reductions, new services in the budget for the 34th Street and the ferry, as well as potential for new service from the Clearwater Airport out to the beaches. And with that, if there's any more questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff? All right, Deb, great job to you and your staff. Wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you, and Commissioner Eggers, I did want to let you know on page 13 of the budget book, we already have what the reserves are and what we anticipate them to be.
All right, we're going to move along to items 7 and 8, reports and correspondence, future meeting subjects. Brad, do you want to update us on the reports in our packet and upcoming meeting subjects?
I do. Thank you, Chair. So, great discussion. Thank you all for your good questions about the budget. And that is why I very much hope that we can find time on your schedules to get with you one-on-one and, go through the budget in some detail. The full budget is in your packet for 2025, but also our monthly reports. I'm very happy to report that the ridership for the month of April 2024 was the first month of the fiscal year where, despite the service reductions made at the beginning of the year and the implementation of fares on the Sunrunner, overall ridership was higher than it was a year ago. This was due to an incredibly successful spring break demand, primarily in Clearwater. It also speaks to something we just talked about, a real strong growth in our UPass ridership, primarily, I think, driven by Pinellas County school students, really taking advantage of using PSTA buses to go places, including school, as well as their yellow school buses. Overall, ridership for the year is just about even with last year, and also helped by the record ridership on PSTA Access, as Bonnie outlined earlier. Coming up next month, we are looking at a busy agenda. I think we'll probably spend some time with the planning committee and the board kind of going a little bit more detail, because of a lot of good questions that you asked today about those new services on 34th Street and the St. Pete Clearwater Express proposal. As Debbie just mentioned, we'll have a public hearing on the fare cap changes that she talked about. We'll take action on the trim notice for fiscal year 2025 budget and review more details about, go into more detail about the services. Additionally, we'll present the construction contract for the new Sunrunner station in St. Petersburg, the new website development contract, a new transportation disadvantaged funded contract with the Homeless Emergency Project, and the proposed balanced scorecard metrics to guide the next fiscal year. I mentioned earlier, thanks to Vice Chair Saraki and Secretary Treasurer Fig Sanders for joining me to kick off the new UPass agreement with Kenwood Neighborhood Association earlier this month. I need to correct myself what I said earlier. So far, 290 people have joined the neighborhood association, not 400. And again, about 40 of those passes have actually been used on the bus so far. So we're gonna keep monitoring that before we see if we want to expand it to some of the other neighborhoods that have called us. Anecdotally, because we're still tabulating the numbers, last weekend, PSTA had a very strong ridership on the Sunrunner and services from the St. Petersburg High School park and ride service to Saturday's St. Pete Pride Parade. That turned out to be a great event, as usual, thanks to Commissioner Cox for joining the PSTA group in the parade. As I mentioned before, Rachel is going to be sending you a request for a meeting about the budget with Debbie. Additionally, my staff will soon be sending out an invite to each of you if you would like to join us here on Wednesday, July 17th, 9:30 to 12, for the first, hopefully annual, what we're calling Coffee, Careers, and Community Open House. We're inviting schools, universities, the Boley Center, Pinellas Urban League, and any other organization that you might suggest has folks that would like to come to PSTA and maybe apply for a job. We're going to give a tour of the facility, talk about the job openings we have, whether they're bus operators, Henry's advanced maintenance technicians, to accountants. PSTA, and we've also invited our private partners, Transdev, Jolly Trolley, and the Looper Group, to come and talk about all the training and development programs that we have for new employees. And you're welcome to come as well, to give a welcome, not to, you can apply for a job if you'd like. Again, thank you for your good questions today about the budget, and look forward to talking to you over the next couple of months about it.
All right, thank you, Brad. Great job. Commissioner Schulman, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. A question about the UPass and also the Historic Kenwood Neighborhood Association. First, on the UPass, does that now include the CPass? Has everything rolled up into UPass?
Yeah, yes, we've decided to just call everything UPass.
Okay. For, at least on the committee level, the reports going forward, it would be helpful to get at least a subcategory breakdown of UPass, so we can see what's coming from schools, what's coming from businesses, and have a sense as to how that worked, because we used to have those reported separately.
We can do that.
So,
yeah.
the other thing is, you mentioned that, and you probably don't have the answer to this, but you said 40 passes were used from Historic Kenwood thus far. I don't know if we've looked into, or if we have the ability to look into, how many of those are new riders, or people who were using PSTA already and are now just using it through that pass versus another route. That's very important to me. When you mentioned this program, I think in the planning committee a couple months ago, one of my big concerns was that we would just be cannibalizing our existing ridership and shifting it from one version to another versus bringing in new riders. So I want to make sure that we're looking at that. And to that point, I'd be very cautious about adding new neighborhoods. This is a pilot program. I don't know if we have a specific parameter for time of letting this pilot program run before we start considering adding new neighborhoods. But I would, in that it's a pilot program and it's meant to give us information about how this works for the community as well as how it works for us as an agency.
Right.
I'd be inclined to have us, make sure we hold off on bringing in new partnerships while we're trying to figure out how that works.
Completely agreed. That's what I told all the other neighborhoods that have called.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, we're going to move on to item 9, other business. Is there any other business to discuss? All right, we'll go to item 10, board member comments. Does any board member have any comments? Commissioner Schulman.
So I wasn't here at the committee level, so I'm going to try to get all my comments out. No, just one thing I wanted to mention. Debbie shared that, we're the #1 customer for Uber and Lyft in the state of Florida. And oftentimes when I see comments or hear comments in public, it's about PSTA's use of big buses. And I think we need to do a little bit more promoting and letting the community know that we are assisting folks in these other ways, that it's one of the reasons why we wanted to go from Care Ride to PSTA Access, right? We wanted people to know that PSTA provides these services in other capacities other than just the large buses. And so a little bit more promoting of our relationship with Uber and Lyft as an option and a way to help service the community's needs, I think is important to help round out the community awareness of what we do. That was it.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Albritton?
Yes, I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention, in anticipation for waterborne transportation ferry service in Clearwater, it will be stepping up here soon. I did talk to Brad at the planning committee last week about a possibility of having the trolley looper in downtown Clearwater to go from parking garages to the ferry to bring people back and forth. And I have talked with our city manager about it, and just wanted to make anticipation that we'll be probably coming to maybe firm that up at some point in the near future.
Excellent, excellent.
All right, anyone else? All right, staff, again, thank you for your hard work and your dedication in keeping us updated. Fantastic job. With that, our next meeting is July 31st at 9 a.m. This meeting's adjourned.
You did it. Good job. Good job.
And you had your light on and then you turned it off. I was.
Mr. Schulman, have a great day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's no time off. I've been emailing, taking phone calls now.